It's time for Clubhouse Chatter. Here's the man, the myth. Here's Norm.
That's right. Norm with you, Clubhouse Chatter. Beautiful Eola Hills here in Amity, Oregon. And my next guest, so Christmas is right around the corner. And so I've been thinking about doing Christmas lists for the baseball fans. And I'm going to put this book on my Christmas list. And it is Bring In the Right-Hander. And it is written by the one and only Jerry Royce. Jerry, how you doing tonight?
Norm, everything's going well. How about yourself? You doing all right?
Doing pretty good. We could use a little heat up here in Oregon, and but other than that, things are good.
There you go.
So you ever been to Oregon?
When I coached AAA ball with the Iowa Cubs, and Portland had a AAA team, yes, I was in Portland in 3 years, and that was one of the places where my wife would fly in, and boy, do we have a great time in Portland, staying around the downtown area. That's a nice city you have there.
It is a great city. It's a fun city. Of course, the Portland Beavers don't exist anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. I really like that stop, but, well, that was 10 years ago, so that's just a long memory.
Yeah. Yep. So Jerry Royce pitched in the major leagues for 22 years. Man, 22 years. What a career.
It surprised me that I lasted that long. When I started out, I didn't know how long a career would last, and it didn't take long once I reached the big leagues to understand that the average career is between 4 and 5 years. So I bucked the trend and lasted nearly 4 times that much.
So you are one of 29 players in Major League history that have played 4 decades.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys who played 22 years and more, but because of the calendar and the way things worked out for me as far as Major League service, I was able to bookend 2 complete decades, the 70s and 80s, between the 60s and the 90s.
That's crazy. That is crazy. So,
well, you stick around long enough in baseball, a lot of asterisks will follow you. That was one of them for me.
One surprising thing that I thought was surprising. You only played in 2 All-Star games.
Yeah, All-Star games are funny, particularly for pitchers in the years that I played. It seems that the starting lineups were chosen, then the reserves, and pitchers, there were a handful that you knew were shoo-ins, but rosters were filled and teams were represented a lot of times because of pitchers. So it seemed that pitchers, there were a lot of guys that were eligible, but because of the rosters and the way the teams were taking shape, maybe a manager wanted more relievers, and the way that's done now, it seems a pitcher goes 1, maybe 2 innings. So a series of relievers from one league facing another wouldn't be too bad of an idea.
Right. So you came up with the Cardinals. So hometown boy, St. Louis, you grew up just not far from the original Busch Stadium. And
that's right. Probably about 15 minutes to get there and another half hour to park.
And so what was that like? I mean, was that for you? I mean, you had to have grown up as a Cardinal fan, being so close to Busch Stadium.
Oh, I did, and everybody in St. Louis was a Cardinal fan, just like it is today. One thing that was interesting in the 50s and the 60s when I grew up in suburban St. Louis is that you could walk from one end of the street during the summer to the other and not miss a pitch, because it was before every house was air conditioned. So people during the summer had their windows open and their radios blaring to the voices of Jack Buck, Harry Carey, or Joe Garagiola.
Man, that must have been pretty awesome growing up in the time. And so now you're the voice of the Las Vegas Stars, and are the 51s, and are they the Mets now?
Well, I'm not the voice. I do some games, maybe somewhere between 15 and 20, so I fill in occasionally.
Okay.
And I do some games here locally, and it's now the farm club of the Mets. Since the Mets came in, they put some pretty good players out there, as the 51s have been able to reach the postseason both years that the Mets have been here. And oddly enough, who would expect an East Coast team connected with a West Coast time AAA facility would be able to make things happen the way they have? But this odd arrangement has made people in Las Vegas very happy, and it's produced some winning ball clubs.
Nice. And so we brought you on to chat about your book, Bring In the Right-Hander. So how did this become? I mean, so when did you start thinking about writing this book?
Well, as I've told a lot of people, it was 65 years in the making, 3 years in the writing, and all of this year in promoting and talking about it. It came about, well, after a series of things happened, going back to my parents passing away. I noticed that there wasn't any written record, and I didn't want that to happen to my kids, grandkids, and even generations beyond that. So I wanted to have something down about my public life, and I figured the best way to do it was to write it. But it really wasn't that simple. It was a roundabout way to get it done, and finally when I had a manuscript, an agent presented it to the University of Nebraska Press. They took a look and said, we can't pay you much, but we can put that book out there. And that's what happened. And I've been promoting it ever since its release back on April 1st of this year.
And how's that been going for you?
Oh, it's been a blast for me. As far as making money, if you want to make money as a writer, I suggest ransom notes.
Yep. I got a buddy who's a writer, and he doesn't make very much.
No, but the experience that I've had traveling in different circles, meeting other authors, and enjoying this step by step, it's been a blast. Plus, it's opened some doors that I hope will lead to more opportunities, but that kind of remains to be seen. So, all in all, for me, it's been a positive experience. I've got my book out there. I've done it the way I wanted to do, so it's been a year that's been where the time has been well spent.
So you are known as one of the greatest pranksters to come through the major leagues, and so there's a couple of stories that I'm all for the pranks. So I spent a season in 2006 with the Lancaster Jethawks, and Brett Butler was our manager. And I can't tell you, our trainer, who was Rob Nepper at the time, I can't tell you how many times we were pulled in his office because of the pranks that we had pulled. But of course they were nothing like some of the ones that you had pulled. So there was this one that you dressed up as a grounds crew.
That's right.
And tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, it initially happened in 1979 when the late Ken Brett and Ken and I were teammates in Pittsburgh, so we had an idea of how both of us were. He came to me one day and said, what haven't you done in this game that you'd like to do? Now, that's a heavy question, especially coming from him. And I told him, I said, I haven't played in the World Series, like to do that. Played in one All-Star game, like to play in more. And I'd like to play baseball a long time. I thought that was a pretty good answer. I said, what about you? And he says, I want to dress up like the guys who drag the infield and actually go out there and do it. He says, I'm telling you this because I want to know if you want to do it with me. And I said, well, when do you want to go? And he said, let's do it tonight. And I said, let's do it. So we got dressed with a grounds crew, went out in the fifth inning at Dodger Stadium and dragged the infield. It wasn't a real hit with Tom Lasorda because he didn't like to see his players leave the bench without his permission. But the fans along the first base line loved it once they recognized who we were. So it was a couple of guys having fun. And I tend to look at it this way. On nights that I didn't pitch, I was still willing to do what it took to help my team win, even if it meant putting on groundskeeper's clothes and dragging the infield.
That's awesome. And Lasorda didn't like that at all, did he?
No, he didn't, and he liked it even less when Jay Johnstone joined the club, and we did the same thing again, except this time when he met us at the top of the stairs, told us both of us were going to be fined $250 in for Johnstone to grab a bat. Well, we were behind by a run in that ball game. Jay got the count to 3-2, hit a home run with the man on to give us the lead. That was ultimately the winning RBIs. And when Jay came back to the bench after hitting the home runs, Lasorda gave him a hug and said his spine was cut in half. And I looked at him, I said, what about me? And he says, you're still as 250. Just sit down on the bench somewhere where I can see you.
What was playing for Lasorda like?
Well, I played for 12 different managers. I counted that up. And someone asked me who was the best manager, and I thought about it for a second because I think they were kind of leaning to see where I was with Lasorda. And I said, Tom was the second best manager that I played for, which begs the question, well, who was the best? I looked at him, I said, all the rest.
Tommy's an interesting guy. I met him once, had dinner with him, and the thing I learned from Lasorda is don't cross him. You know, he's cool with you until you cross him, and then you're done.
Well, maybe it all depends on what you mean by crossing him. If you tell the truth and you can back it up, he may not like it, but he'll respect you for it. And the next time you ask him for an interview, I doubt if you're going to get something that's really going to be informative. Well, but a lot of people are like that.
Right.
So Tom liked to have fun, and he'd like to play jokes on the players, which opened the door for me. No other manager was like that. He was a rare one as far as that was concerned. And he seemed to capture the imagination of the fans in Los Angeles when he took over as manager, because in the late 70s, the Dodgers won, and it was the talk every morning at the water cooler throughout offices in the Los Angeles area. And people started coming out to the ballpark. And every year, it seems, since Lasorda took over, with exception of 1981, the strike year, the Dodgers coincidentally drew 3 million. And when you draw people, they buy a lot more stuff at the ballpark. TV ratings go up, as do the radio ratings. And Tom was having an effect on the Dodgers at the gate. The players liked it because they responded to the fans that came to the ballpark. So it was win-win for everybody.
So what do you consider yourself? Do you consider yourself a Dodger, a Cardinal? I mean, you played for 6, 7 different teams, I believe?
No, I played for 8 teams, 7 different teams. I played for Pittsburgh twice. You know, I don't consider myself any of those, or at least not anymore. I was asked during the book tour which was my favorite team, and it was no time that I answered the 81 Dodgers, and that's understandable because we were world champions.
Right.
So now the Dodgers have changed. In fact, they've been sold a couple of times, first to Fox, then to McCourt, and now the Guggenheim Group, which now handles the Dodgers. And there's a lot of people that are employed by them that I've never met. But when I've gone in there for an old-timers game and got a chance to meet everybody, they're very pleasant. But I don't have a history with them.
Right.
And the same thing can be said about all of the other teams that I played for. It was a different time. It was a different place. And when I played for a particular club, that was my favorite club. But times have changed, so I leave that up to the fans. And what's interesting is that when I'm in St. Louis, a lot of people consider me a Cardinal. When I'm in Pittsburgh, a lot of people remember the 5 years plus that I spent with the Pirates. And around the western region of the United States, people link me with the Dodgers. And it's all good. It's all good as far as I'm concerned, because it's in the minds of other people as to where they want to place me. For me, I was happy wherever I was playing. I played 22 years. How can I be unhappy about anything?
Right. So you threw a no-hitter June 27th, 1980 against my beloved Giants. And what do you remember most about that day?
First of all, at the ballpark, it was warm. It was kind of balmy, according to Vin Scully when he did his pregame show. Of course, that happened so long ago, and I was so focused on the game, I really didn't notice if there was any wind or not. Usually on night games, the winds can be, the swirling winds can be a little brutal. But that particular night, I was so locked in, I was just concerned about getting that hitter that was up at the plate out, especially early in the count if I could. I guess what was special about it is that the fact that nothing extraordinary happened. There were 3 balls that were put into play that were close to being hits. It didn't take a great play to make the out, but it took a good play. So, in essence, there was 1 error committed. I got 28 routine outs in this ball game. Only struck out 2, didn't walk anybody. So, as far as flash as a no-hitter, it wasn't really there. Nothing like what Clayton Kershaw did this year, striking out 15 using just 107 pitches in the process. So that's that's doing it in style. That's just being overpowering. For me, a lot of routine outs and some good plays behind me.
And they acknowledged you there in San Francisco for that no-hitter, correct? I mean, the next couple of days were it sounded like pretty special. I mean, the applause.
Well, yeah, what was surprising is that when I went out for the 6th inning, there was a smattering of applause, even though we had an 8-run lead. So a lot of people stuck around just to see if I was going to get the no-hitter. And with the finish of each inning, there was more applause. In the next inning when I went out, by the 9th inning, people were on their feet hoping that they'd have a chance to witness history. And I was more than happy to oblige them. It was 3 routine ground balls that finished the Giants off, and there I was in a situation where 34 years later, I'm still meeting people that told me they either saw it on TV, heard it on the radio, or were there to witness it in person.
And you actually got fined for acknowledging the crowd. Lasorda fined you for that, right?
He was fining me for everything, and that was okay by me. I don't think I ever paid any of them. When I walked on the field on Saturday, there was a pretty good house there. It might have been a full house, and as I walked across the field, remember, you had to walk in from the bullpen in right field to the bullpen along the third base line. Everywhere I walked, I got a standing ovation, and hell, I'm not one to shy away from that. You don't get those that often. So I just took my hat off and waved to the crowd. Now, he hated the Giants like a lot of guys in the 50s hated the Giants. I guess that's where that rivalry was born. Me, I could care less. A win was a win. I didn't have that baggage of Dodgers versus Giants that a lot of guys who came up through the respective organizations did.
Right.
So when he said that's $50 because you acknowledge Giants fans, I pointed out to him. I said, "There's a cluster of Dodger fans sitting there. You can see the guy in the blue jacket. Boy, did he stand out like a sore thumb." He said, "What about him?" I said, "That was the only person I was acknowledging. That one, and then there's 1 or 2 more here and 1 or 2 more there. Deal with it."
It's crazy. That Giants-Dodger rivalry is nuts. So I grew up in Idaho, and I grew up a Dodger fan. I was a Braves and Dodger fan. And so I've worked for the Giants for 8 years doing different things in the organization for minor league teams and stuff. So I became a Giants fan. And, I mean, even in the Giants front office, you got the Davenports, who are a great Giants family. God, they hate the Dodgers. And you go back to Tommy Lasorda. And I remember, Brett Butler, when I was in Lancaster, when he was a manager, he introduced me to a couple of the Dodger guys, and they were the same way. They hated the Giants. That is really a hated rivalry. It's crazy.
I guess it's something that both organizations like because as far as they're concerned, if someone's talking about it, that means they're thinking baseball. And if they're thinking baseball, there's a good chance they'll continue that thought process and buy tickets when that club happens to come to town. Like I said, it didn't mean a whole lot to me. I know that there was some real deep feelings about it. In fact, Duke Snyder told me in a crowd one time when he was giving his speech that he hated Halloween. And when somebody asked him why, he says, because the colors of Halloween are orange and black, the same colors as the Giants, and I hate the Giants.
That is the second time that I've heard a similar story, but it was from Carl Erskine. And he was telling me the same thing about when he got out of baseball and he ended up going back home to Anderson, Indiana, and started coaching at his local college, that he had the colors changed because they were orange and black. And he hated Halloween as well. That's kind of funny.
Well, how about this? My high school colors were orange and black. So, that was no big deal for me. Like I said, it's a rivalry. People like to talk about it. For me, it's nice to get a lot of people involved because there's energy at the ballpark. But personally, I think it's much ado about nothing.
What is your favorite story out of your book? Do you have a favorite story that's in the book that you like to tell?
I was asked during the book tour back to the Midwest what my favorite memory was as far as playing ball. So I had to think about that, and I had to think about it real quick because I had a pretty good-sized audience. And so I said, here, let me list them for you. I'll go from number 5 to number 1. We've already talked about number 5. That was the no-hitter. Number 4 was my first day in the big leagues, and that's understandable because that was in St. Louis in 1969, and I grew up a Cardinal fan. And in the space of 27 months, I went from a high school senior to my first day in the big leagues. So you can understand just how important that is. Number 3 was my final day in the big leagues, and that was because I had a chance to pitch that final game and walk off the mound with my head held high and my dignity as I announced my retirement just earlier that week. Number 2 was pitching in the 1981 World Series, particularly Game 5, where the Dodgers beat the Yankees, took the lead in the series, and a couple days later, we went to New York, beat the Giants, and we became the world champions. That was the only time I pitched in a World Series, and I got a World Series ring as a result. But the number one thrill that I had in baseball was flying home that night when I had a chance to look at the faces of all the guys that I spent the summer with and realize what we went through was going to bond us together for the rest of our lives. I then went to sit down after walking through the cabin and seeing some guys with that tired look in their face, but still that excitement still going through their bodies, the realization that you're a world champion. I remember looking out my window seat and realized that the lights in the distance might be the city of St. Louis. And that, putting together the World Championship and the possibility of that being St. Louis, I thought of all the people that helped get me there. That, for me, was one of the best moments in baseball because, like a lot of kids, I had major league dreams. I made it to the big leagues, but not only did I make it to the big leagues, I was on a plane after my team had won the World Championship. There was no better feeling in the world as a baseball professional than the moment you realize that you're on a World Championship club.
Wow. That's pretty special. So once again, Jerry Royce, author of Bring In the Right-Hander. How do we find your book? Where can we find your book?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. Now it's time for the advertisement regarding this whole interview. You can get them. You could probably get it at Barnes & Noble. I'm sure they carry it. Or if you have to, you can get it at Amazon.com. Both are pretty good places to get it, but it's not the best place. The very best place to purchase my book, and you'll get a signed copy for sure because I'm the one that actually signs it. If you go to my website, jerryroyce.com, and you just follow the instructions for a signed copy. I usually fill out the orders the next business day and get those things in the mail, and usually within a week you'll have that book with you. So what I suggest is you find a comfortable chair, strap yourself in, get your favorite beverage, and sit down and get ready for a few belly laughs.
And from what I've seen, there's quite a few in there. So
well, there's a lot of good times in there. There's a lot of mentions of some tough times as well. You don't play 22 years without a lot of good times and the bad times that really seem to balance out one another. But for me, every day that I spent in the big leagues was a good day. There were some days that were just better than others.
Yep. Well, we're definitely going to have to hop on and order a book, and so I'm definitely in. So
Well, keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. It's one-stop shopping for Christmas.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to Norm.
There is no other place on this planet that you can get a signed book before Christmas, and if you buy it right now, you'll have it in your hot little hands. You can read it, but the hard part's going to be not talking about it to your buddy, to your friend, to your mom or your dad, because you're going to have to let them read it themselves. That's going to be the hard part. The good part is you got their Christmas gift, and you got it as good as it can be.
Absolutely. Jerry, thank you for coming on.
Norm, thanks for having me, and to all of you in the Portland area, hello, and enjoy your holiday season that's coming up, and please keep in mind, bring in the right-hander for your holiday shopping.
Absolutely. We'll put it up on the list, and we would love to have you on again sometime soon.
Well, let's see what we can do about that. Norm, have a nice holiday season, a happy Thanksgiving, which is coming up right around the corner, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Jerry.
Okay, bye.
Have a good night. So once again, Jerry Royce, bring in the right-hander. Man, I'm actually, I'm not a huge reader, but I'm really looking forward to this book.
Should be good. The stories were pretty interesting. I mean, that's the era of baseball that I'm really interested in.
And there was a couple of ones that we didn't share, but there was one that he talked about with Dave Parker, and he was in an elevator with Dave Parker and Muhammad Ali. And so, and this is what it says. So Dave Parker was like mesmerized by Muhammad Ali, and so there was nothing to say. In fact, for the only time in memory, Dave Parker was he couldn't speak, and so he broke the ice. And so what he said was, go ahead and tell him how you could whip his ass like he told us in the locker room. And he says, Ali got wide-eyed attention as he turned to face Parker. Geez, Jerry, what the hell, Dave stuttered. He recovered quickly, however, and put his hand in to greet the champ. I'm Dave Parker. Ali replied, yes, I know who you are. Ali looked at me as I put my hand out. I had the biggest smile when I said, hi, champ, he was interrupted. You're an instigator, Ali said. That's who you are. Dave and Muhammad Ali exchanged pleasantries for the remainder 10 or 12 floors. For Royce, it was the longest elevator ride in his life. And so there's all kinds of stories. 22 years. I mean, think about it. 22 years, 4 decades. I mean, that's pretty amazing. He had a solid career. He won 220 games. Played in 2 All-Stars, won a World Series, threw a no-hitter. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
It's definitely not the norm.
It's definitely, it's not your Bob Gibson's numbers, but, 22 years, come on. I mean, what a blessing, to kick around for 4 decades. So check it out. Bring in the right-hander, jerryroyce.com. So we are going to wrap it up. So Baseballisms Black Friday special coming up. Largest sale of the year with savings up to 50% more on limited edition items. Baseballisms.com. Check out baseballdudes.com. To be the best, you must train like the best. Chris Gazelle at baseballdudes.com. Proper Cuts Barbershop over on Baker Street. I just threw Brian off purposely here. So Proper Cuts Barbershop. Go see Carlos and the boys. Based by Pros, Mitch Canham, basedbypros.com. MDM Designs, Mark Canham. Check him out. He does our shirts. YamhillToday.com. We stream live every show on YamhillToday.com. And we are 9-Inning Know-It-All on 9-Inning Know-It-All. Check it out, 9inningnowitall.com. And I'm Brian, that's Norm. So
I don't even know where to start there.
Hey, Thanksgiving's next week. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. I think we'll be back on next Sunday starting at probably about 5 o'clock. So check us out. Everybody have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Check us out, Clubhouse Chatter. C Hater. so we had to leave the T out. Facebook, check us out, Clubhouse Chatter with Norm. YouTube, we're on YouTube, Clubhouse Chatter. And our email is clubhousechatter18@gmail.com. Check us out, and thanks for listening.